We're going to look at Noah a little bit today, and then we're going to go look again at his way. I got ahead of myself last time. So let's look at this here. So let's go to Genesis 6, verse 7. And what you see here is that God is going to is saying, I want to reset things. It's a reset, right? Some folks are worried about right now that there might be a reset, right, in this nation. And hopefully we will not have a full reset. But in Genesis 6, verse 7, it says, the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I've created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. And I sort of looked at that context of that made them in the context of the animal creation, what was going on last time, that something was wrong with the animal creation as well, that it wasn't following. It says down in verse 12, it says, God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted what? His way upon the earth. And so we're going to talk about his way, hopefully, at the end of what we're doing this morning. Verse 8, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. There are three different things there it talks about Noah, right? So God's getting ready to press a reset button. All flesh on the face of the earth has corrupted his way. It talks about down in verse 13, they're filled with violence. Okay, it talks about in verse 12 that, like I said, he's corrupted his way and he's going to destroy it all, right? But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. And Noah is a very special person. He's a just man, which means that he has some morality, okay? When he deals with the situations of life, he is just. He's looking at things the way God. God is just, okay? And he is the justifier, this is Romans chapter 3, of him which believeth in Jesus. He is just. That's the first character of God, one of the major characters of God. He is just. He is right. He is holy, all right? So Noah has a morality, it's like God's, how he sees the world, because that's what we're talking about. I mean, God says in Romans chapter 12, verse 1, what's he said? I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service, and be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Noah's mindset was the way God saw things, right? So he was different. He was different than the world, okay, the rest of the world. And he was perfect in his generations, right? The idea of perfect is the idea of that he was sort of separated from what everybody else was doing. If you take a look at Noah, there's several other passages that talk about Noah. Hebrews chapter 11 talks about it. 2 Peter talks about him. 1 Peter talks about him a little bit. And you find out that Noah was different, all right? That he was righteous. He was a preacher of righteousness. He stood up, okay? He would have been a target, if you think about it, right? Yea, all that live godly shall suffer persecution. But he was perfect in his generations. Okay, he was mature and separated, all right? He was special. All right, and it also says down in verse 9, and Noah, what? Walked with God, all right? He had a morality, so like and he was separated, but he also had, the rubber met the road, how he lived his life. As he walked with God, his walk was just like his thought. That's basically, no, he was a complete individual, right? He was a perfect saint. Okay, and if you think of that, he's mature. Okay, some folks' walk doesn't match the talk, right? Okay, well, Noah's walk and talk and everything matched, and God looked on the inside and saw good man. He lived a good man to everybody else. So everybody else saw that he was different. It's one thing to be a closet Christian. I don't know if it is. I've heard that term used before. I'm a Christian in this building, and then to be a Christian outside the building. All right. It's easy to be a believer and walk in this building. It's harder when we walk out through the about 25 doors we have in this building. When you get past one of those doors, that's a little different world. Well, Noah was the same inside and out of the situation. God puts him in an interesting category. Go to Ezekiel chapter 14. Noah's listed with two other individuals. So he has a slightly different, he's special. All right? So Ezekiel 14. So and here's Ezekiel 14. Let's just start in verse 12. Ezekiel's receiving revelation from God. It says, "The word of the Lord came again to me, saying," Ezekiel 14, verse 12. "The word of the Lord came again to me, saying, Son of man, when the land sinneth against me by trespassing grievously, then will I stretch out my hand upon it, and will break the staff of the bread thereof, and will send famine upon it, and will cut off man and beast from it." I'm gonna bring some stuff. All right, and he's talking about Israel and their failing and stuff like that. But verse 14, "Though these three men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, they should deliver by their own souls, by their righteousness, saith the Lord God." If there were three people just like Noah, Daniel, and the other guys, what? Job. Those are three very special individuals, right? One before the flood, one after the flood, and one through the flood. One who lived both sides of the flood. Okay, interesting people. Down in verse 20 it says, "Though Noah, Daniel, and Job were in it, as I live, saith the Lord God, they shall deliver neither son nor daughter. They shall deliver their own souls by their righteousness." He says, it doesn't matter if they're there, I'm going to still bring it in this case. Right? He puts them in a special category. So Noah was perfect generation. If you look at what God says about Job, he was a just man, right? He's perfect, okay? He says that about Job, same thing about Daniel. Interesting. So anyway, so he's a very special person, right? In what he's doing. Noah, what about his kids? They're not necessarily, they're good. They're not as good as Noah, though, right? Okay, they're getting in because Noah is their dad, right? In some ways. Let's go back to Genesis 6 if you're not there already. Noah walked with God like Enoch, right? Okay, Enoch walked with God and was no more, right? Noah had a relationship with God. It was a relationship where he found grace in the eyes of the Lord, right? Moses, he asked God, in Exodus. I'm not going to go there. Exodus 33, 32, 33. He asked God to show me your glory. I said, God, show me more of you, and stay with us. Don't send an angel to lead us through the into the land. You stay with us. If you're not going to go with us, just leave us out here in the wilderness, is what Moses says to God. Okay, he spoke to God face to face, as a man speaketh unto a friend, right? And God said Noah or Moses, he says, I'll do what you say because you found grace in my sight, and I've called you by name. There's a special relationship. Noah had a relationship like that. It doesn't say he spoke to God face to face, but he found grace in the eyes of God. God said, Noah's a special person in the face of the earth. He's going to make a covenant with Noah as we go look on down through. So go back to Genesis 6. You're there, right? Okay. Verse 9 says, "These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man in perfect generations, and Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence." So what you have is the first 7 verses, you sort of have God's, I'm fed up. There's a big problem going on, right? We talked about the giants and the angels, things like that. Okay. And then you have, sounds like 2 baseball teams, right? Giants and Angels. Okay. they were, they were, okay. But anyways, these weren't the baseball teams. Okay. And it was corrupt, and God had, basically, he looked at this and I'm done. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to fix it, all right? I'm going to fix it. I'm going to press a recess button. I'm going to kill it all. I'm going to destroy it all, right? But Noah had grace, but he didn't want to. He's still going to preserve life, but through a person that he's going to bring, right? And he says to Noah in verse 12, "And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth." And we're going to look at that. "And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth." So he's going to destroy it all right, with the earth. It had become corrupt. It had become ruined, right? The Hebrew word there is the idea of ruined. It's, it was great. Okay, it started out good, right? In fact, it was very good if you go back to the Genesis account. But now it is ruined. Something had caused it to spoil. Some things. Mankind obviously is part of it, right? I think Satan is part of it, right? And those things. And it had become violent. And the idea of it says there in verse. You just read. It says in. Let me go find a verse here. Verse 11. And the earth was corrupt. What? Before God, it sort of in God's face, right in His face. It was blatant. All right, it was intentional. All right, it wasn't just passive activity; it was intentional activity. Back in, we don't. Romans 1 is not talking about before the flood. It's talking about the Tower of Babel in that area, but it's the same truth about man's rejection of God. When they knew God, they did not want to glorify Him as God. When they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, right? It was it was active. It wasn't just, the devil made me do it, right? It was active rebellion and rejection in the face of God. It was it says all the earth is verse 13 says, for the earth is filled with violence through them. That's all flesh. That's not just man. It's the beast and the creeping thing and the fowls of the air, right? It's all flesh had corrupted His way upon the earth. They had become violent and cruel and evil, okay? It was that type of thing. So what is this way that they have corrupted? We looked at I think we looked at the idea of the flesh, the beasts and things like that. And I showed you, for instance, like in Job 41, this Leviathan that was definitely not the way, before the flood, was definitely not God's way. God's way was they weren't mean, right? They were. You could hang out with a lion in your backyard and go pet it. All right, Adam, they petted the beast, and everybody up to the flood should have been able to, because after the flood's when the fear of man and when you could now meat comes on the table, okay, at that point in time. Before that, it's the fruit of the tree and the seed-bearing plants and those types of things they could consume. And the animal life did the same thing, but there was a problem. There's some parts of creation had been corrupted. I don't know how. Okay, I'm going to throw. Again, the conjecture is Satan was involved in what was going on with mankind's corruption with the giants. Then why not the animal creation as well? I got okay. That's flood stuff. I got some stuff on the board here. I'll show you if we get to it. If not, it'll be there next time here. So anyway, so corrupted His way. Let's go to 2 Samuel for a second and look at His way. I'll tell you, it's a neat study. Especially, it's easy. It's really hard to do a study on His way using a Strong's Concordance and a Greek lexicon and things like that. But it's far easier to do it if you have a piece of computer technology, and you can type in the quote His way, and then just see every occurrence of it in the Bible, right? And it shows up a whole bunch of places, right? And 2 Samuel is one of the major places here. That 2 Samuel chapter 22. At least I think 2 Samuel 22 gives sort of a definition, or talks about it. This is related to David. 2 Samuel 22 is it's in my Bible. It's just David's song of deliverance. It's a song. David's giving out a psalm. Really, okay. You'll probably find many of these parts. If you look in the book of Psalms, you'll find a lot of this stuff quoted in that passage. But this is he's singing unto the nation. It says in verse 22, chapter 1. It says, "And David spake unto the Lord the words of this song in the day that the Lord had delivered him out of the hand of all his enemies and out of the hand of Saul. And he said, The Lord is my rock, and my fortress and my deliverer, the God of my rock, in him will I trust. He is my shield and the horn of my salvation, my high tower and my refuge, my Savior. Thou savest me from violence. I will call on the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from mine enemies. Sound like some Psalms, right? Okay, because it is a psalm, right? And so David proclaims all the things that God has done for him, right? So then, it talks about it in verse 7. In my distress I called upon the Lord and cried to my God, and he did hear my voice out of his temple, and my cry did enter into his ears. Okay, and the earth shook and trembled, and the foundations of heaven moved and shook because he was wroth, he was angry. God came out of his temple and he brought it, all right? He came to my deliverance, right? And you see some interesting stuff going on there. But you get down to verse 22, it says this. He said, I'll start in verse 20. He brought me forth also into the large place. He delivered me because he delighteth me. The Lord rewarded me according to my... Here's what David says. So why did God do this? The Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands hath he recompensed me. For I have kept what? The ways of the Lord, and have not wickedly departed from what? God. For all his judgments were before me, and as for his statutes, I did not what? Depart from it. I did what God said, all right? I kept his ways. I was also upright. I'm in 2 Samuel 22, verse 24. I was also upright before him. I have kept myself from mine iniquity. Therefore the Lord hath recompensed me according to my righteousness, according to my cleanness in his what? Eyesight. You know what? I kept his ways. I lived a righteous life. I kept his judgments. I did what God said. All right? Down in verse 31-ish. Let's look for start in verse 30. For by thee I have run through a troop. By my God have I leaped over a wall. I mean, I did things that were impossible. As for God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord is tried. He is a buckler to all them that what? He's a security. He's a guard, right? For who is God save the Lord, and who is the rock save our God? David says that I have kept his ways because his way is perfect. Right? His way is perfect. But you can look at far more. Go to the book of Job. Job. I don't know, just that little phrase, because God's judging the earth, judging man and all of animal creation, really, except for fishies, those things in the ocean, right? He's judging those things because they had corrupted his way. Right? They moved away, they corrupted it. His way is righteousness and holiness, and what he says, it means that they all rejected that. Right? They were doing something totally different. Job chapter 8, verse 19.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
What's the I remember you covering this last week, but I don't remember the answer. When we talked about the animals and how they were corrupt. Was it a sin? I mean, it's not.
They're not sin. The animal creation was no longer functioning, well, at least a lot of them. I mean, obviously some were because he brought them into the ark, right? But there was that is his way was that they have after their kind, right? So if you look at what the creation of animal creation was, it's after their kind. So they were no longer producing after their kind. I would consider that genetic manipulation. They were no longer lions, tigers, and bears. They were something morphed, all right, something weird, something like the Greeks and the Romans, like half this, half that, weird stuff, right? And the other part was that they did not have toxic masculinity. That's the term today, right? If you've seen anything, that's meanness and viciousness and cruelty. Okay, they were kind. They were like Behemoth in Job 40, and they was just this giant beast. But in fact, it says he's chief of all God's ways. You take a look at him. That's the way a beast should be. It's nice. You go pet it. You can ride it. Okay, it eats herbs. It drinks water out of the lake, and it eats vegetation. That was the way God designed it in the garden. That was his way, right? But then you go to Leviathan, and that one's called the chief of the children of pride, right? Okay, so it's like the top problem. Okay, it's evil, it's mean, it's cruel. Go touch it, you die. That's the idea of that thing. And so the idea is that some of the animal creation, maybe the things that we glorify with dinosaurs, all right, and how we look at dinosaurs or things like that, like these velociraptors or things like that, they would not have fit God's way before the flood, right? So they were not created that way. If they were created by God, I mean, I think they were changed. I mean, they weren't created; they were morphed maybe, or something changed, right? They were not the way God designed things, right? If they were, then they ate vegetation, and all the science is wrong. All right, so they weren't ripping things apart and chomping on each other. They were eating fruits and veggies. All right. Anyway, so they corrupted that way. Okay. Again, I'm sure I did not spend as much time as I want to study that, but an hour or two. But yeah, so I'm sure there's far more in Scripture that I didn't see about that. Okay. Job 8. Okay. Verse 19 says, "Behold, this is the joy of what? His way, and out of the earth shall others grow. Behold, God will not cast away a perfect man, neither will he help the what? Evildoers." There's joy of his way. So doing things God's his way. There's joy in what? Serving Jesus, right? Job 23. I just pulled out a selection of these. And then when I was looking at that his way, there was a verse in Proverbs that kept ringing in my ear, and I'll get that. That's going to be the last one I'm going to look at. Maybe you remember. It was one of the verses we memorized when we used to memorize Scripture here ages and ages ago when I was a kid. But it was a pretty powerful verse. Job 23, verse 10. "But he knoweth what? The way that I take. When he hath tried me, I shall come forth as gold. My foot hath held his steps, his way have I kept and not declined." God has a way. What his way is how we're to live, it's his word, what he says. When he talked to Joshua in chapter 1, he says, "Do it this way." Okay? Don't turn to the left, don't turn to the right. All right? You meditate upon my word, you do it, and that's when you'll have good success. Right? His way. Psalm 37. Psalm 37. You can tell I'm just sort of punching through in order here, right? Psalm 37. Verse 22. "For such as he blessed of him shall inherit the earth, and they that be cursed of him shall be cut off. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in" what? His way. "Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholdeth him with his hand." Down in verse 34, it says, "Wait on the Lord, and" what? "Keep his way. And he shall exalt thee to inherit the land. When the wicked are cut off, thou shalt see it." Those are promises to Israel and those particular ones, but the issue is keep his way. That's the way. His way is what God has said, what God has done. That's his way. Proverbs 14 is the verse that rang in my ear when I was thinking about his way. Proverbs 14, verse 12 says, "There is a way that seemeth right to a man, but the ends thereof are" what? "The ways of death." Psalm 14, verse 12 says, "There is a way which seemeth right unto man," right? And that's when it says that everyone did what was right in their own eyes, the book of Judges, right? Right? That's their way. But the ends thereof are the ways of death. So there's God's way, and then every other way is really the ways of destruction, the ways of death, right? How many ways are there to heaven? Jesus Christ is the way, all right? All right, and so the way it's a really cool study. If you have some time, take a look at it. I think you would enjoy looking at like his way and things like that. Back to Genesis 6. It's not where we're... But anyways, all the earth, everything had corrupted his way on the earth. And the earth, verse 13, "And the earth was filled with with violence," right? And God says, "I'm going to destroy it. I will destroy them with the earth," right? So now you have Noah his sons being listed, and then you have God saying that I'm going to destroy all flesh, right? But he comes to Noah in verse 13. He's saying, God said to Noah, the end of all, so he reveals to Noah his plan, right? Why? Why Noah? Well, because he's a special guy, right? Okay. So Job was a special guy, and he had no clue what was going on behind the scenes, right? Until the end, when God takes Job and stands him up and says, you don't know anything at this point. And then Job says, yeah, you're right, I'm stupid. That's Job 30. If you want to know a summary of chapter 42 is basically, you know what? I opened my mouth, started talking, didn't know what I was talking about. And I should have just kept my mouth shut. And that should be good things for all of us, okay, when it comes to things of life sometimes when we don't know what's going on. Chapter 6, verse 13. And God said unto Noah, right, the end of all flesh has come before me, right? It's come before my face. It's like I've made this decision. For the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. And I'm sure Noah went like, and then he says, to make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, not pens, not cages. By the way, the word rooms there, the Hebrew word there, it appears 13 times in the Bible. And the other 12 times it's translated nest. All right? So basically places where the animals can, roost, get a lot of hay in there, I guess, right? Think about it. It'd probably be good to get a lot of hay in there, right? Okay. So he says build a bunch of nests, places where they can bed down, where the animals can bed down, right? He says, thou shalt, rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. Pitch is a tarry substance, right? Okay, and it's both inside and out. Can't imagine what that would have smelled like. That would have been, especially with only one window, and it was closed. Okay, so yeah.
Because he talked to.
Well, he's a spiritual being. He'd be like a spiritual being is more than flesh. So, like, for instance, angels can show up and walk around in his room, and you wouldn't, Ken over there could be an angel, been hiding out for a long time, Okay. The issue is like an angel. They're not showing up that way today, by the way, because there's a lot. The cross created a distinction of difference that's happening. But an angel could appear. They showed up in the Old Testament. They showed up physically, to talk to the shepherds and things like that. So an angel can sort of step in their spiritual bodies, just like you're going to have a resurrection body that's able to, we talk about walking through walls. The idea is you sort of step in and out of this physical plane that we're in, right? Satan has that type of body, so he just stepped in.
So he wasn't included on the killing all the flesh on the earth. He
wouldn't have killed angels. Killed the giants, but didn't kill the angels.
Okay, so right. He wouldn't have included in on that.
No, because Satan could just step off. The angels just stepped off. They got out of there, right? But the sons of the angels, or the giants or whatever, they were killed. Okay, and they were killed in the flood. I have a interesting thing I found there's a website called Answers in Genesis, and I just Sharon asked me a couple questions at the end of class last time, I think it was, and she's trying to get the names of the giants. So I thought, well, maybe somebody else has found the names of the giants. So I did a little searching on that. I haven't found them all, but either. Okay, I haven't looked yet. I haven't gone far enough yet. I couldn't find anybody who's listed them. You've done a better job than anybody else. So, but there was an interesting in that answer. Just say, what about the giants in the Bible or something like that, right? And I'm going to show you maybe I'll just show it to you now. I felt okay going to this website because there weren't a whole bunch of pop-up ads. You got to be careful when those pop-up ads show up. So I have another site we'll go to that. So there are giants. There's a lot of references to giants in the Bible. It's a pretty neat thing. It talks about the Hebrew word, talks about differences. There were one of David's guys killed a really big guy from Egypt, and he was only 7.5 feet tall, and God didn't call him a giant. Just so you know. So if you're only 7.5 feet tall, you're not a giant, right? Just so you know that. So But anyways, just some good stuff. And talking about other giant things, but trying to sort of like, here's the Egyptian guy, but it's an interesting thing. But I wanted to get to a story. Oh, there it is. Is this it? Okay, so here's an account. So these are extra biblical. I mean, it's not in the Bible. But here's like for instance, Greek mythology like talks about these giant beings, whatever. But here's an interesting thing. It was in an autobiography by Buffalo Bill Cody, who basically recounted his sort of a legend that was shared from the Sioux tribe. All right. And I thought it was an interesting thing. He says, it was taught by the wise men of this tribe that the earth was originally peopled by giants, who were fully 3 times the size of modern men. Maybe a little exaggeration, but who knows. They were so swift and powerful that they could run alongside a buffalo, take the animal under one arm, tear off a leg, and eat it as they ran. Okay. So vainglorious were they because of their own size and strength that they denied the existence of a creator. When it lighted, talking about lightning, they proclaimed their superiority to the lightning. When it thundered, they laughed. Basically, they just mocked all the things of God. Here's the interesting part, though, to me. This displeased the Great Spirit, and to rebuke their arrogance, he sent a great rain upon the earth. The valleys filled up with water, and the giants retreated to the hills. The water crept up the hills, and the giants sought safety on the highest mountains. Still the rain continued, the waters rose, and the giants, having no other refuge, were drowned. Okay. Interesting. It's like, hey, that's just something that's that's mythology or whatever, but there's always some type of grain of truth with stuff, right? And where did these Indians come from? Well, I'm not care what they think they came from. They would have come from Shem, Ham, and Japheth, right? They'd have came from Noah, right? That is, if they're going to take any legend. By the way, almost every culture on the face of the earth has a legend that deals with the flood, all right? Why? Because it was real, okay? Because it happened, right? It happened to somebody's great then, right? And they all knew Noah. They all go straight back to Noah. Everybody goes back to Noah, right? And those through his 3 boys, right? Let's keep going. So back to Genesis chapter 6. So let's take a look at this ark. Excuse me. So he builds this ark. Well, God makes a covenant. Let's continue reading the covenant. Verse 14 is, make thee an ark of gopher wood, rooms with the ark, pitch it and everything like that. Verse 15, and this is the fashion which thou shalt make of it. So God's giving Noah some specific criteria. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, about 300 or 450 feet ish. All right. Okay. The church here is 120 feet long. All right. 120 feet from what wall to that wall. So take 4 of these. That's 480 feet. All right, so that would be 4 times the length of this. All right. It says the breadth of it is 50 cubits. That's 75 feet. All right. Okay. It's 60 feet from this wall to that wall. So add another 15 feet. So basically out to the front of the building. Right. Okay. Down basically to almost close to the end of halfway to Tuckahoe Park. Okay. So. It's a big structure, right? And the height of it, 30 cubits. That's like 45 feet, right? It's about 20 feet to the ceiling in here. Okay, it's about a 20-foot ceiling. So we need to go twice that high plus a little bit more, all right? And it says, and a window shalt thou make in the ark, okay, and a cubit shalt thou finish it above. So basically it's a 1-cubit window, 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet. So it's a big window, right? Right, and I know that I showed you some pictures and everybody draws some other stuff, but I know that's not the case because over in verse 6 of chapter 8, and it came to pass at the end of the 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made, and he sent forth a raven. It's just a little window, right? It's not some giant ventilation system. Right, verse 16, back to Genesis 6. A window shalt thou make in the ark, and a cubit shalt thou finish it above, and the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories, what? Shalt thou make it. So basically about 15 feet up, there's another, basically a floor, another floor. So 3 stories, right? 450 feet long, 75 feet wide. Put a bunch of pens in there, right? Nests, rooms, okay, in there where the animals can bed down. And behold, I, even I do bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth, what? Shall die. But with thee will I establish my covenant. So this is a covenant, a promise. And thou shalt come into the ark, thou, thy sons, and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female. So 2 of everything, right? Right? Of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind, every creeping thing of the earth after his kind. 2 of every sort shall come, what? Unto thee. So no, you're not picking them. I'm bringing them, all right? To keep them alive. All right, and then and take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for thee for food for thee and for them. Thus did Noah according to all that God commanded him, so did he. So how many of every animal brought into the ark? 2, right? Actually, there's more than that in some, right? Tell me which ones there were more of. There were 7 of the clean animals. Something I just saw for the first time. Look what it says in verse 3 of chapter 7. Of the fowls also of the air. So all the birds, there were 7 of those, of every fowl. So all fowls, right? Of fowls also of the air by 7s, the male and female, to keep the seed upon the face of the earth. So of the beasts, there's 2 of every kind, except for the clean ones. There were 7. Why were there 7? Because after they got off the ark, Noah sacrificed one of them. But I talk about thinning the herd. I mean, you have to look at that and go like, is that really a wise thing to do? Well, it was, because God, if you look at it, was well pleased, right? It was the reason there were 7. What do you think that 7th one was? Obviously, there's 3 pairs, and then a loner. 3 pairs, and then a loner. So what's the loner, male or female? Male, because it was sacrificed. I don't know about
So
there are some like pigeon. There's certain birds, doves, and things that
sacrificed.
Yeah, but it says
all the animals that were more than 2 were all sacrificial animals.
I don't know. The ones that were of the clean beasts, yes.
Right, because there were certain beasts that could be sacrificed. But
Yeah.
For the poor people, there were certain.
Yeah, but there were some other fowls. But it talks about the fowls of the air, so it doesn't say just the ones for sacrifice. So it seems to be all of them, right? Let's see, what else do we have here? Anyway, so all life is going to die. The flood water is going to die. All that have the breath of life are going to die, right? Who are in the flood, or that are in the flood. Let's see, what else? Genesis, go back to verse 18. What I pointed out was that God brings unto him, right, unto Noah, the animals, right? He doesn't have to go out and search for them, but he has to gather the food. Verse 21 says, take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt what? Gather. And so he had to go out. So part of his job, part of his task, was to build the ark, but also to gather all the food, right? So they went out, and what was Noah after the flood? What did Noah start doing? He had a vineyard, right? He was a farmer, right, after the flood, right? Apparently, he might have been a farmer before the flood too. He was a preacher of righteousness, but he had to gather food. If he didn't farm it, they were out finding it, right? It also talks about, when you look at the destruction, verse 4 of chapter 7, for yet 7 days, and we're not going to get to this today, but for yet 7 days I will cause it to rain upon the earth, 40 days and 40 nights, and every what? Living substance that I have made will I what? Destroy from out the face of the earth. So part of that gathering was that he was gathering, bringing his fruit stuff in, but he's going to destroy every living substance, right? So substance, that's more than animal life, breath of life, right? So all the trees were destroyed, all the plant life was destroyed apparently, in some fashion. At least it was wiped out. So there had to be some time for there to be some regeneration after the flood. That's why Noah's, when the flood waters abated, it took a little time to come out. Okay? He waited till an olive branch shows up, a leaf comes back, right? And so that some plant life had started to regrow on the earth. So, but anyways, he's going to destroy all living. Okay, it's Genesis 7, verse 1, and we'll probably finish with this. He says, "And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, For thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. What he says is, it's time. All right? So he gives a covenant with Noah. Noah spends, there's between chapter 6 and chapter 7, 60, 80 years have passed because he's now built the ark. All right? He's gathered in all the food. All right? And now he says, okay, Noah, it's sort of time. And he says in verse 2, he says, of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by two, the male and the female, the fowls also of the air by sevens, the male and the female to keep seed alive upon the face of the earth, for yet 7 days. There's 7 days now. Time's now ticking. For I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance I have made will I destroy from out the face of the earth. And Noah did it. Noah did according to, unto all that the Lord commanded him. I have a homework question for you. All right. So I want you to, so when you read verses 6 through 11, well, verses 6 through 10. Okay, verse 6 through 10, and then you read verses 11 through 17 or verse 16. They say the same thing. I'll read it to you, and then there has to be a difference. Because here, let me read it to you. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. Noah went in, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him into the ark because of the waters of the earth, of clean beasts and of beasts that are not clean, of the fowls and of everything that creepeth upon the earth. There went in two and two unto Noah into the ark. There went in two and two unto Noah into the ark, and male and the female, as God had commanded Noah. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters flood were upon the earth. Got it? In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, in the 17th day of the month, the same day, were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. And the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. In the selfsame day entered Noah, and Shem, and Ham, and Japheth, and the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wisest sons with him, into the ark. They and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, every bird, every sort. And they went in unto Noah into the ark. The 2 and 2 of all flesh went in the breath of life. And they that went in, male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him. And the Lord shut him in. And it says the same thing. There's a lot more detail in that second part, right? Okay, there's a little more detail. I want you to think about that, to figure out what the difference is. But why does God repeat it twice? I looked at that, thought, like, you just said the same thing, right? Noah, get in the ark, bring all the animals, it rained. Noah, get in the ark, bring all the animals came, it rained. All right? Interesting. Think about it.